Okay, so I will be starting, and I would be moving between medical and surgical fields so that we can keep it interesting throughout. Okay, so I would be starting with Dr. Rajat. What are the current FDA approved treatment options, and what is your usual approach for when this kind of a typical patient comes to you for patterned hair fall?
Thank you, Dr. Kavish, for the introduction. So currently FDA approved, I think we all know that minoxidil for androgenetic alopecia and also finasteride for androgenetic alopecia. These are FDA approved. We are waiting maybe that the JAK kinase inhibitors might come in for alopecia areata and get approval, but they are limited by certain side effects. The usual approach for patients with typical pattern hair loss in my practice is as per the approval. The only thing is that I have shifted a bit from using a lot of oral finasteride, which I used to do in almost every male patient earlier, now to topical formulations of minoxidil with finasteride, after some of the evidence coming in the past few years of the topical having similar efficacy. As for women, I usually use 2% and at times, quite frequently, even 5% minoxidil, which is off label. But I do use it even when I'm starting off, depending upon the grade of pattern hair loss that they are facing. Of course, I don't use finasteride in women. Maybe in a post-menopausal case, I'll start with spironolactone and then maybe consider finasteride.
Okay, okay. So most of the points in this already was covered, as sir already mentioned. Minoxidil 2 and 5% are approved, and then low-level laser light therapy is FDA cleared. It's still not, so it means that it's safe, but it's still not FDA approved. So we have very limited medical treatment options which are FDA approved. Now, moving forward, Dr. Deepak, what are the recent advances in etiopathogenesis of alopecia? So previously our approach was just DHT based. Have we moved forward in terms of etiopathogenesis in this regard?
Yeah, the recent advances in etiopathogenesis of alopecia are the ones like the miniaturization of the hair follicles, which is taking place in the androgenetic alopecia. It is also taking place in the alopecia areata and telogen effluvium cases. But the major focus in the current scenario is on the arrector pili muscle.
Yes.
What is happening is that in both of the miniaturization and alopecia areata, it is reversible because the arrector pili muscle it is still in the muscle form, while due to the ongoing weakening hair roots, the defect is in the follicular cycling. So due to defect in follicular cycling, progressive adipose tissue is deposited in the arrector pili muscles, and this leads to the permanent miniaturization and irreversible loss to the dermal papilla cells.
Yes. Anyone would like to add anything to this? Yeah, so in addition to what Dr. Deepak already mentioned, so even in androgenic alopecia, so when miniaturization happens, so first the secondary follicles are lost when the attachment from the arrector pili muscle is weakened. So those secondary follicles lost, and then the whole follicle is lost, as already mentioned. Also, now there is more evidence about the WNT beta catenin pathway being involved in hair fall, and also the prostaglandin pathway. And for all the attendees, this is one of the more elaborative current etiopathogenetic mechanism. So loss of extracellular matrix protein, prostaglandin pathway, this WNT pathway, this also plays a role in addition to the typical DHT pathway.
Kavish, I'd just like to add one more thing regarding the efficacy of minoxidil, which has also gained some scrutiny over the last few, I think, years, regarding the follicular sulfotransferase expression.
Yes.
And how it is, and depending on how the expression is, some people may fail minoxidil and some people may not, and this is in the outer root sheath, the expression of this enzyme.
Yes. Yeah, so we would be coming to a detailed discussion of minoxidil also, then we will discuss this point further. Dr. Manoj sir, what are the usual tips and tricks you follow for effective counseling in patients of alopecia? It may be for hair fall, maybe for hair transplant. So when patient is coming in for baldness, so basically what tips you would like to give to new dermatologists, new plastic surgeons who have just started their practice, how to effectively counsel their patients?
See, I remember a line in Love and Bailey, if you read that during your MBBS times in surgery, that for an appendicitis in a female, you must get the patient to earn her operation. You got to give it time and let her earn her operation. Similarly, for a hair loss patient, get the patient to earn a hair transplant, not straight jump into a hair transplant. The first line of treatment must always be medication. You must use minoxidil, finasteride. If you think you feel happy with some other protocols, it's fine. But these two are the basic drugs which are approved all over the world and are known to be efficacious. And use it for at least 6 months. Unless you feel an area is there which have no chance of revival of hair roots are lost, you've done your trichoscopy, etc., find no evidence whatsoever that hair is going to grow back, and the only option is hair transplant. Otherwise, always try minoxidil, finasteride, maybe some vitamins. Be patient. Let the patient understand that you've tried everything and not jump straight into a hair transplant, which is going to be a wrong decision many a time if you've done it straight away.
Definitely, sir. Thanks. Anybody else would like to add anything to this?
I think it really depends on the kind of alopecia they are facing. So the counseling may vary for a telogen effluvium patient, an alopecia areata patient, and an androgenetic alopecia patient. And I think we all have our own tips that we give the patient of a telogen effluvium, which nowadays we are facing so much, particularly during the pandemic. And an alopecia areata patient also needs to be told that this is self-limiting and a cycling defect more than anything else. And so with an androgenetic alopecia, as sir very beautifully put it across, that they need to earn it, and you need to tell them that there is a spectrum, in fact, wherein there's one side medical, one side surgical. And now we are blessed with some bridge treatments in between, which we may offer at the particular grade.
Yes. Yes. So Dr. Manoj, so you have a very busy practice, and many times you must be doing multiple procedures, and along with that you might have to manage consultations also. So how you manage such busy OPD or OPD with different procedures?
You see, fortunately, my operation theater for my hair transplant patients is next to my OPD room. There are certain steps in a hair transplant which must always be done by the surgeon. You can't leave it to anybody else. Like if you're doing FUE, taking out the grafts, if you're doing a strip, taking the strip, closing the area, and of course, making all the slits yourself, the design, the intensity, the pattern, the direction, all that has to be looked into. So you'll have to manage in a way where you can give a certain amount of time to your patient. If you have a OT running along with an OPD, where in your OPD, you cannot be thinking of your hair transplant patient. You've got to switch off. So you've done all your work in that particular section, come down to see whatever patients you can, go back into the rest of your work, and then come back at the end of the day. You cannot mix up these two or get them to run parallel. That's not going to be an ideal situation, and neither your counseling patient nor the hair transplant patient will be satisfied. So you've got to be able to segregate and separate these two totally separately if you want to have a successful practice.
Definitely, sir. Anybody else would like to add anything to this?
Here, I would like to find out a couple of things. I'm sorry.
Yes.
See, what we do is always, what you mentioned is very appropriate. You have a printed brochure. You probably ask the patient to see a video explaining everything, so it makes your work less. You may have somebody else, a junior doctor, doing some trichoscopy or counseling the patient, and then only bring the patient in. Remember, a hair transplant patient, proper counseling takes about 30 to 45 minutes, or even more at times, with the complete package. So if you can cut down your own time by getting these done before, you'll spend less time. These are efficient ways and great systems. Your slide is fantastic.
I think setting priority is the foremost thing. In like the dermatologists with the busy OPDs, they can't manage the hair transplant procedure along with the busy OPDs. So one should be accepting to himself that what he should give the priority, use OPDs or the hair transplant procedure. Then only he will be able to do justice to the procedure. So we should segregate the time for the procedure and also for the hair transplant consultations, because usually they take 30 to 40 minutes. So it is very important to take time for hair consultations separately apart from routine dermatopathies.
Yeah, sometimes specifically if it's a relatively young patient has brought his parents also, then sometimes it goes beyond 1 hour also. So it depends. Dr. Shashank, you need to unmute yourself. Yeah. Till the Dr. Shashank unmutes, I will.
He's not unmuted himself.
Yeah, he needs to unmute himself. Dr. Rajat, how often do you
Unmuted now.
use? Yes, yes. Dr. Shashank, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes, yes, sir. Hi. Sir, I wanted to ask you, how frequently do you use minoxidil 10% in your practice? And are there any particular indications for which you use this?
I always prefer minoxidil 10% once I have tried 5% and the patient is not responding, or the patient has reached a certain plateau where the response is poor, or patient is not feeling satisfied. Only then we switch over to 10% concentration. Although my observation is that 10% concentration causes more irritation in comparison to 5%. But certain preparation have got less irritation, but definitely 10% has got more irritation.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, sir. Dr. Rajat, would you like to add anything to this?
Yes, Dr. Kavish, I think my usage of 10% has gone up over a period, and I do feel that the initial push a 10% gives is not bad. It's good. Having said that, once you stop the 10%, the shedding is equivalent. I mean, it's a little more than maybe a 5%. Surprisingly, though, when I went through the literature, I was seeing that 5% when compared with 10%, in fact, had almost equivalent, and 5% had more benefit in one of the studies which I came across. And of course, 10% had more irritation as well as more problems with the shedding, etc. But having said that, I do use it, and I use it typically in a younger patient who has a higher grade of baldness, to give an initial push.
Yeah, so what in the studies, as you rightly pointed out, 5% 1 ml twice daily is the most effective one. And if you're using 10% 1 ml twice daily, then you also run the risk of systemic absorption being significant enough to cause systemic side effects. So that's also one of the issues. What I primarily do is, so those patients, there are many who don't want to use minoxidil 2 times a day, and they only want to use it once a day. Then I say that it's okay, you use 10% 1 ml once daily, and may add a peptide preparation otherwise if needed in that. Okay.
Dr. Kavish, there is a study in female pattern hair loss which has shown the minoxidil 5% once daily has given almost equivalent or more results with compared to twice daily of minoxidil 2%.
Yes.
So can that results be extrapolated to the use of minoxidil 10% once daily as compared to minoxidil 5% twice daily in males?
Yes.
The studies have not shown superior efficacy.
Okay, Dr. Deepak, how do you deal with cases? So lots of patients, when you're prescribing minoxidil, they complain of this residual flaking or irritant reactions. How you manage those cases?
First of all, these patients usually complain that they are getting excessive dandruff with the use of minoxidil solution. They are not able to realize that this is a residual powder with the solution itself. So I make them understand this is the residue of the drug. This is not excessive dandruff or flakiness. Then if there is irritation and redness, erythema over the scalp or the hair margins over the forehead, then very mild potent hydrocortisone solution can be given to these patients for symptomatic relief initially for 10 to 15 days. But otherwise, if the symptoms persist, then we have to switch to the alternative solvent solutions of minoxidil.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Manoj sir, so this is one of the hair transplant case. He has come to you 18 days post-op hair transplant with this. So initially for the first 15 days, he was okay. Now he is facing lots of swelling, erythema and irritation on the scalp after application of minoxidil. So it was there on the first day, then it increased on the second day. How will you manage this case now?
Is there a reaction also on the forehead, or it's only in the scalp?
It's on the scalp as well as on the forehead, as you see.
See, so probably this patient is having irritation because of the minoxidil, the alcohol content. So if it's a little more on the redder side, it's better to stop immediately. Ask the patient to stop minoxidil. You can put a mild steroid, as Dr. Deepak said. You can give a local antibiotic steroid, with steroid or only steroid if required. But minoxidil has to stop. Many patients you will see, they complain of more irritation in the forehead rather than the scalp itself, because the way they are using the minoxidil is dripping down onto the forehead and creating more reaction. So if we tell them exactly how to use it, put your head up and back so that it doesn't drip forward. If required, even give an anti-allergic, wait for some time, and then probably change the brand of minoxidil to something which is alcohol free, or maybe try a foam or something else which might be suitable and get him not to have this reaction. But you have to stop the minoxidil at least for a week or 10 days or even more till everything is settled down fully before you can start. And start maybe once a day and then switch to twice a day if there's no problem.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Okay. Dr. Shashank, how often you prescribe finasteride? In how many percentage of patients of patent hair loss in males you prescribe finasteride? And can you share some tips and tricks to allay anxiety?
Basically, if the patient has got no contraindication regarding finasteride, I always prefer to start finasteride from the very beginning, 1 milligram of finasteride, and counsel the patient that it does not causes any side effect, and whatsoever side effect is happening is because of your knowledge. Because I have seen this drug, using this drug for last 25 years, and there is no side effect has been reported. So very good counseling is very important. Before the patient comes to you and says you have written a medicine which causes loss of libido or decreased sperm formation, etc. So you should counsel from the beginning itself that you may come to know that this medicine is for this purpose. So, but if you counsel the patient beforehand, so this kind of problem does not happen. And I always prefer to use finasteride from the very beginning if there is no contraindication.
Okay. Dr. Rajat, what are your views on this so-called post-finasteride syndrome?
Dr. Kavish, as you have written here, it is controversial, but I do think there is some reality to it because patients do face it. And which is why I said in your first slide that, I have started shifting more to a topical finasteride solution, which I earlier never used to believe in. But after some data, which is fairly conclusive, has poured in that, yes, it does work. And we have seen it clinically also. I have started shifting to that, and it becomes much more easier because nowadays many of the patients coming in, we have younger patients coming in who are very well sort of versed with what they've read on Google, which is true or untrue, but they have a lot of questions about all this. So it becomes a little easier to put them on a topical formulation rather than not give them finasteride at all then. I used to, like Dr. Rastogi said, this used to be, thing that I would put almost every patient on 1 milligram of finasteride also at one time orally, but now I have decreased that.
Yeah, but what I have seen in my practice is that overall, see, in patients who are taking oral finasteride, they tend to do better than those who are not. So in comparative, there is a difference. So that's one of the things. So
I think it's a little early with the topical. Maybe we need to sort of study that more well. But yes, of course, with oral finasteride, the results were great, no doubt. Even if the person is not applying minoxidil, then also oral finasteride used to do a good job, and it still does. Yes. No doubt about it.
Okay. Dr. Manoj sir, this patient has come to you primarily for a hair transplant. How will you manage this patient? So he says that he already has tried 6 months of minoxidil and finasteride, and he had some improvement in the frontal forelock area. And this is his position now, and he plans to get married after 1 year. So how will you manage this case?
So in this patient who has tried minoxidil, which is not going to work in this temporal recession, the answer will be a hair transplant. A few things you've got to discuss with the patient. A, his genetic history, the area of baldness in the family on the father's side and the mother's side, depending, is going to lose more hair, where you want to make the hairline. B, his status of his donor area, the density, the number of hair grafts you'll be able to harvest. And then see what hairline does he want and what would be more realistic. He definitely will need a hair transplant to correct this, and if he's 1 year away from his marriage, he expects, probably a good time for you'll need at least 9 months, 6 to 9 months, even more at times to get a result. So yes, go ahead and do a hair transplant now, get all your investigations done, see everything is fine. and then plan procedure and tell him that it will take 6 to 9 months or even more to get a result, so that he should be understanding that this is the situation which will happen if you do a hair transplant today. Also remember, the density of a hair transplant can never be like very thick hair. There are a lot of videos which are around, a lot of different charts which people have read or reviews people have seen. The density of a hair transplant, even done best, can never be equal to somebody with very thick hair. A variation, of course, will be the diameter of his donor hair. The thicker the diameter, the more dense it will look. But it's not going to be in every case. But you can get a good result in this patient if he's got good donor hair. As you see here, I think a good hair transplant done, and he should be fine after 6 to 9 months or more.
Okay, yeah, so thanks, sir. Okay, now Dr. Deepak, how often do you use dutasteride in your practice, and what are the indications for that?
The use of dutasteride in my practice, I have limited to less than 5% of pattern hair loss patients. The reason being is that the results which can be achieved by the hormonal treatments that can be achieved in 90 to 95% of patients by giving finasteride 1 milligram daily. So, and even finasteride 1 milligram twice weekly can give the blockade and give the results in most of the patients. So why you need a more potent drug to block both the enzymes and give that extra edge result? For that extra 5% results, we are exposing the patient to much more side effects. So I have even seen the prescriptions, 18-year boys are given dutasteride in full dosages. So I just don't accept that dosages in such a lower ages, and that drug should be limited to less than 5% of patients of male pattern hair loss.
Okay, yeah, I would like to differ. Yeah, I would like to differ in opinion. So in a study, so there has been significant number of studies who have compared finasteride as well as dutasteride, and when the doses were compared, 0.5 milligram dutasteride with 2.5 milligram of finasteride, the side effects was comparable. The incidence of adverse effects was comparable. So the incidence of side effects has not found to be higher than dutasteride, but it's not FDA approved yet. But the European dermatology guidelines say that you can use finasteride as a second line, dutasteride as a second line therapy in cases who have not responded for 12 months on 1 milligram finasteride. So that's the European dermatology guideline. And in my practice, I have seen cases who was not responding to finasteride, responding to dutasteride. As you rightly mentioned, it's only about 5% or so, but it does help. Okay, so this Dr. Rajat would be that person to answer this. He already has answered it partially, that the role of topical finasteride.
So, like I said, Dr. Kavish, I have used it, and I have fair amount of sort of clinical pictures which do suggest that it does work. Like I said earlier, my confidence in it was low, but over time with using it, sure, I think it works and it can be used and given a fair trial.
I agree. So what I feel currently is that oral finasteride with topical minoxidil, this works the best. The second is minoxidil with topical finasteride. Third is minoxidil alone. So if
I'm completely on the same page. I would agree with you there.
Yes. Okay. And how often do you use peptide preparations, Dr. Shashank, in your practice? So how often do you have to go beyond minoxidil and use peptide preparations?
I have tried peptide for almost last 5 years, but I still feel that minoxidil is gold. Patient who do not tolerate, or patient who are fussy with minoxidil, or those who are over it, those who don't want to use minoxidil, only then I try to switch over to this kind of preparation. Or we can use alternate therapy, morning peptides, evening minoxidil. Or those patients who are completed minoxidil therapy and they have reached a stage, basically stagnation is there. In that situation, combination can be tried. but I think nothing like minoxidil, whatsoever be the combination, whatsoever be the concentration of procapil, but minoxidil is minoxidil and peptides are peptides.
Okay, anybody else would like to add anything to this? Yes, sir.
I would just like to say that I tell my patients, so like Dr. Rastogi said, that there are certain patients who are not keen on minoxidil because the first question is, how long will I need to apply this? Will I need to apply this forever? And I've heard that there is a lot of hair fall when I stop this. So yes, in those patients, sometimes one can start with peptides, but like he said, that peptides are peptides and minoxidil is minoxidil. And I tell this to my patients that, you know, this is not something which has the same kind of evidence. And with minoxidil, there is a lot of evidence now of how it has an anti-apoptotic effect, so on and so forth. So obviously these don't. I also combine it with minoxidil at time to prevent an effluvium, wherein I feel sometimes it helps to some extent.
Okay, okay, thank you. Dr. Manoj, sir, what are the scenarios in which patient is insisting for a hair transplant, but you say no to a hair transplant?
See, the younger the patient, the better abstain from doing surgery right away, because patients who are young with the minimal amount of recession of the temporal areas, etc., are going to lose more hair. By doing a hair transplant, you are only doing a surgical exercise and maybe some financial gains, but the patient long will never be happy. So as I said, let them earn their operation, put in a lot of counseling, give them minoxidil, finasteride, wait and watch. Also patients who have wrong ideas, I want to get back to look like Shah Rukh Khan or something, and you have hardly any hair or very poor hair. You can never do that. So you always underplay the expectation of the patient. If you have given a lot of hope, then anyway the patient will be under your head. He will be eating your head and saying you did not do this, you did not do that, etc., etc. There are some other areas where you have to be very careful. I am very, very careful doing hair transplant on the female. I've done more than 700, but you have to always explain to them that I can never make it as thick as what you want, or like a film star, etc. I can improve local density. I can maybe improve the parting line, the front area, but I will not be able to go beyond a certain extent. About your slide where you mentioned about trichotillomania, of course, that patient needs proper counseling. Traction alopecia, you get good results, especially in Sardarjis, you know, a lot of them who have had a turban earlier, no problem. And scarring alopecia, again, unless the disease has stagnated for more than a year or so. I've done about 30 cases of scarring alopecia, especially alopecia areata with lesser density, but the disease must have stopped progression, must have been controlled, and it's not going further. Then only can you think of doing a hair transplant. Also, people who are shedding a lot of hair at the point of time when they have come in, doing a hair transplant may be a little counterproductive. They probably get them to be stabilized on their hair loss, not having losing much hair, and then do a hair transplant. The younger the patient, the more careful you got to be.
Okay, sir. So this again is for Dr. Manoj sir only. So this is, so you see, this is a female who has come to you for a transplant, and you want to lower his hairline. His hairline is shifted up, and he has come for a hairline lowering procedure. That the donor area is good. Now you are planning a hairline for this case, but when you see in the front, you see in the yellow marked circle. So there are areas where in the same area, the hairs are going in completely opposite direction to each other. How will you plan hairline in such a scenario? How will you plan the hairs in such a scenario?
You see, a female hairline is different from a male hairline. A normal male hairline will have temporal recession on both sides,
yes,
with a little lower, a widow's peak or whatever in the center. But a female hairline is more straighter. And a good way of identifying a hairline actually is ask the patient to look upwards, frown upwards, contract the muscles in the front, where the color and the wrinkling in the forehead is very much different or absent in the scalp, which gets you a good idea of a hairline. The hairline in the female, even if it's turning in different directions, normally all the hair in a human being go forwards, and as you go laterally, goes more forwards and laterally. And this pattern has to be maintained. Later on, by combing, by styling, etc., the hair directions might change. But when you do a hair transplant, you have to follow the basic pattern of the hair going forward in the front. More and lesser the angle, the more anterior you become, and going little laterally and becoming nearly 5 degrees or 0 degrees when you come right to the anterior point of the hairline to make a natural looking hairline. Don't make the hairline too low also in a female. That will not look, and if the density is not good, it will be a problem. A widow's peak or 2 or 3 widow's peak look nice in a female, but the direction always will be the normal direction of a human being, which is forward and anteriorly in the front and becoming more lateral on the sides.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir. So what I usually prefer is that you have to try and follow the existing hairline pattern of the patient as much as possible to try and avoid the damage to the existing grafts. So while adapting to such scenarios, usually we have to change the directions accordingly, and then you have to try and manage it as much as possible to see that the direction, as sir mentioned, you have to maintain the angles, but you have to try and maintain it to the patient's existing hairline as much as possible. Okay. So, sir, how to create more natural looking parieto-temporal angle? So this I have seen in many patients. So what happens is when they are coming for when they have underwent transplants or somewhere else, so they have hairs in this area. This is not looking natural. So when they got hairs, but it's not looking very natural. So what are the tips and tricks for to get more natural looking parieto-temporal angles?
Absolutely correct. I've seen a lot of celebrities with the hair transplant. The hair in the front look good, but the temporoparietal angle and the way when the hair are going down in the temporal area, they don't look very unnatural. You have to remember that the angulation in this area comes as close to zero as possible.
Yes.
And on the left hand side for a right-handed surgeon, it's easier to get zero. But on the left side of the patient, putting a hand around makes it quite difficult. Here you can turn the angle at double 90 degree so that you can get almost flat angle when you're entering. And a coronal way of slitting in this area also can reduce the angle and get more natural results. Of course, drawing the temporoparietal angle is important. And I think the best way is ask the patient to wrinkle upwards, and you will find the normal curvature of the forehead and the scalp with different color and absence of wrinkles can get to a different hairline. The hairline I've seen, probably making a paper on this, follows a lot according to the direction and the pattern of your eyebrow. You see the flatter eyebrow, you usually have a flatter hairline. With a more arched eyebrow, we'll have a more arched hairline. To work on this, there are different ways of trying to measure, etc. But what you see here, the angle has got to be more and more towards 0 to 5 degrees, especially when you reach the temporal areas to get a proper looking hair at this point. And lesser density, you don't have to be very dense.
Okay. Dr. Deepak, so in your practice, so when you have to design temporal triangles, so you must have seen that in many cases it's very difficult to maintain proper angulations in temporal triangle. I very often, when I see cases coming from outside, it's in many cases, so the temporal triangle has been done so bad that when we have to plan revision transplants, we have to take them out. So the angulation is an issue. So how you maintain angulation in cases of temporal triangles and how to give more natural looking results?
I think there is a very good trick which Manoj sir has started, which is by using a needle 18 or 20 gauges. 20 gauges is a preferred one because you use mono follicular units here, and it can be twisted twice. The same needle can be twisted twice, so that we can be just making the holes at just the 0 angles, which as sir have advised. So when the angle is proper, as close to 0, and single follicular units are placed in proper directions, then these hairs, when they will grow, they will not be flaying. Usually what happens when the angle is more, they just tend to flay in the air. So it can be reduced and just they will stick to the skin.
Yes, but what I have seen, yes sir.
Can I add a point? You see what's important also is to get the curl of the hair correct.
Yes,
the curl of the hair should be ending on the scalp and not away.
Yes,
if the curl is wrong, the angle may be right, but the hair is going to jut outward. That will look bad.
Definitely.
So it's important that who is putting in the hair, see the curl of the hair is correct towards the skin.
Definitely. But this also needs to be explained to the patients that, so you may even plant at almost 0 or 5 degrees, but around 10 to 15 degree variation in angulation is possible when the grafts are healing. So this needs to be explained to the patient. So that's why if you have done the angles wrong, if you suppose you have planted it around 45 degrees, then some of the grafts obviously are going to go beyond 45 and it's going to look odd. Manoj sir, so this patient is a case of almost grade 6 baldness, and he has come to you. He has very good donor areas and he wants full coverage in one sitting. So this is what his expectations are. how will you approach this case?
Full coverage in one sitting is going to be a challenge. Probably may take 2 days. I would here take a strip and they do FUE. I can't see his beard, but if he's got a good beard, it's a fantastic area for FUE harvest, especially for the crown area, because the coarser, thicker hair give you much more coverage. And if he's got good donor hair, good, you can get about 5,000-6,000 grafts combining with FUE and FUT a strip, then probably you can do a big change in him.
Yes, definitely, sir. So this is what I did in this particular case. So what did, so he had excellent beard, as you mentioned, and as well as the chest area. So we planted around 6,200 grafts in total over 3 days. We took from his scalp, beard, and chest, and this was the front and the vertex. As sir rightly mentioned, we primarily use the beard hairs in the vertex area. And here you can see some of the curliness and some of the textural change of the beard hairs also in the vertex. But this needs to be clearly explained to all such patients, is that you cannot expect to have very high density in vertex in such scenarios. So you need to prioritize the front, and you need to plant less hairs in the vertex area. And we also have published a series on JCAS on this, how to approach this case of advanced grade baldness in such scenarios. And this, as sir already mentioned, so we preferably use a scalp and the beard hairs in the vertex area and in the back area. We primarily use a scalp hairs in the front, and we use beard and body hairs in the back if it's required in those scenarios.
Yeah, Dr. Kavish, I beg to differ in this.
Yes.
Yeah. In the vertex and the crown area, gradually what happens is that there is thinning in the natural baldness.
Yes.
So hairs gradually becomes thinner in that area, and when we transplant the beard hairs, which are naturally coarser and thicker than the scalp hair, so we tend to place the beard follicles in the mid scalp and not place the beard follicles in higher densities in the crown area. Beard, we place the beard follicles primarily in the mid scalp and lesser in the crown area to give more natural results.
So the important point here is you mix and match. You don't put only beard hair in the crown area.
Of course.
You put beard hair and scalp hair in the crown area. So that adds to the volume. Even if it gets thicker, the other hair will add to the volume. But if you only put beard hair, it will look like a zebra, you know. Some places very thick and some places thin.
Yeah. As I mentioned, as I also mentioned in the picture, we have to mix and match. So you cannot place just only one type of hairs in one particular area. Dr. Shashank, this is a case who have come to you. These are two different scenarios. Okay. So case, you can take it as case A and B. What would be your approach in this two particular cases?
Basically a fair trial of minoxidil. Since I'm not practicing hair transplant, so I always try, as Dr. Manoj said, that a trial should always be given before referring the patient for hair transplantation. So I prefer, in the first scenario, the chances are much better in comparison to the second scenario. So I will try finasteride, minoxidil, and biotin preparation for at least 6 months. And the patient is satisfied, only then I will continue. Otherwise, I would say this is a situation where you can think about the hair transplant and you need to visit a hair transplant expert. And in second scenario, I would say that only some hair are likely to grow. Rest of the hair will not respond. Even if they respond, they will be just fine hairs. They will not become a terminal hair. So you are an ideal case for a hair transplant.
Dr. Rajat, would you like to add anything to this?
I think Dr. Shashank has said everything. Only the pattern here is a little, it's a little like an unpatterned hair loss as compared to more patterned hair loss. But yes, I would do essentially the same thing from a medical perspective.
Yes. So as sir rightly mentioned, sir, so whether you are a hair transplant surgeon or not, so in this kind of scenarios, we should always give a fair trial to medical treatment first before
jumping in for hair transplant, as sir rightly mentioned. Dr. Deepak, this is a 19-year-old male child who has come to you. He's severely depressed. And as you can see, he is having extensive alopecia, and his father is grade 7 baldness. How will you manage this case now?
Yeah, as I can see here, there is a prominent thinning even in the residual hairs in the occipital area and the parietal areas. So as you have described, he is depressed. So first and foremost, counseling, and if required, then counseling by psychiatrist is very important. And as he is just 19 years of age, then the medical treatment is the primary thing for the stabilization of the hair loss. By that, if he takes treatment continuously, he may get some 20 to 25 results or more than that, depending on the miniaturization of hair follicles. But for hair transplantation, I think we should wait for 4 to 5 years, so that till that disease, till that time, hair alopecia also stabilizes and his mental health also improvises to a great extent.
Okay. Manoj sir, would you like to add anything to this?
A lot of people come like this and actually they get psychological problems because absence of hair, they're teased in college, they don't want to go to college, they don't want to meet people, they get depressed, they get inwards. Psychiatrists or psychiatric counseling is good, but you have to understand that this mentality will only change if he gets some hair, A, and B, he is to understand that he is not going to get a full head of hair. So you have to give medication, as Deepak said, right? For a good amount of time, maybe for as long as possible. I would not sit back for 4 or 5 years, because this might have a permanent psychological damage on the patient.
Yes.
And I would also think that the frontal tuft present now, seeing of the father or the grandfather, whatever the history is, may be lost.
Yes.
Even a small amount of hair in an individual changes the looks greatly when you see a photo or yourself in the mirror.
Yes.
So probably help him with a hair transplant, explain to him that, well, it's not his fault, it's not his the reason that he's lost the hair, it's genetic, like diabetes or blood sugar or blood pressure, etc. We'll never get you full head of hair, but we can give you something which will look good. Even ask him counseling about a wig if he wants. But do something, otherwise this guy will, if he's in today's world where the phone is a big culprit, you see, your mobile phone clicks pictures from every angle and people, even a small boy in the back will come and tell you, probably will have psychological problems if you don't give him some help.
Okay, sir. And so if you suppose you have given him, you delayed the transplant for probably 1 year or 2 years, you gave him medical treatment, he had some improvement, but still obviously he's going to have significant baldness still. And now you have to plan a hair transplant for him, say at the age of 21. How will you plan the transplant in that scenario, given he has comparatively limited donor area?
So tell him that maybe, okay, we can do a frontal area well, the back will still be less, you'll be not having too much hair, or have less density and cover as much as possible. If he has beard hair, great. Chest hair is great. I'm not a big fan of body hair from other parts like the abdomen, etc., because the anagen phase versus telogen phase is not that great, and you are doing a surgical exercise, but how much it will work, I've never seen pictures of great results. Long term, short term maybe there. And then plan a conservative hairline, not be too low. Discuss with him and go ahead and do a hair transplant for him. And let him feel a little better than what he is at right now.
Yeah, so as sir said, say when you're doing it in young patients, for all the attendants, even if you're planning a hair transplant in such scenarios, you always have to be very conservative. Okay, don't try to recreate the hairline which he was having when he was at 10 years. You know that it's a case of advanced baldness, and you have to be very conservative in planning it. Dr. Rajat, this again is a young female who is anxious and depressed and has come to you. What are your differential diagnosis and how will you manage this case?
Dr. Kavish, I think, she has diffuse thinning all over the scalp. And from what I'm seeing, there is maybe a variable. So either this could be a diffuse alopecia areata, it could be an androgenetic female pattern hair loss. I would obviously want to do maybe a trichoscopy and a biopsy to confirm. And I don't know, I cannot maybe tell so well in the picture, but to rule out scarring also. So I would like to take a biopsy in this case for sure and see what we are dealing with and further go ahead with the treatment.
Okay. So do you feel in some scenarios if with proper trichoscopy we do not need biopsy?
Yes, maybe. See, for example, if this person has alopecia areata, diffuse A, then alopecia areata has a fairly consistent trichoscopy. So I would be able to tell what I'm dealing with to some extent. But at the end of the day, gold standards that does stay a biopsy, no doubt.
Okay, I will take it a point further. So on trichoscopy, there were flame-shaped hairs, coiled hairs, and obviously, as you can see in the pictures, also hairs were of varying angles. Yeah. So and there were small follicular hemorrhages in some of the spots on trichoscopy.
So was it a case of monolithics?
Yeah, so this was a case of trichotillomania actually.
Trichotillomania.
Yes,
Wow.
yes. So so I discussed, I suspected this, and then I separately I sent the parents outside and discussed with the patient, and then the patient agreed to this. So this so when we took detailed history, then it came out, and the trichoscopy picture was also suggestive of trichotillomania. And then we have to manage it accordingly.
On clinical picture, one may not suspect trichotillomania here, but when you have written young female, anxious, depressed, that should have been a giveaway.
Yes. Okay.
Dr. Kavish,
Yes,
one
sir.
question.
Yes, sir.
How do you reveal this history, or because I have been in the practice for 25 years and I have not able to do this job, and most of the time or many a time even parents get angry that what you are talking.
I completely agree with your point, sir, and the same happened in this patient. So I will tell you how I dealt with this. So what happened was, so in this, basically seeing the picture, I did suspected this. She already had visited almost about 10 dermatologists before, and none of them has written trichotillomania in their differentials. They already said so. When I asked their parents, so he was accompanied by his elder sister and his parents. So when I discussed with them that, have you ever seen her pulling her own hairs, they were literally furious. They said that how the hell you can ask this question. And then they mentioned earlier also 2 more dermatologists tried to ask these questions, and we were very furious on them also. But I was persistent on this diagnosis. Then on hearing this and then listening to the reaction, I was even pretty sure. So then I sent the parents outside. First, I discussed it with the patient. So the patient did not agree straight away to me also, but from his reactions, I was fairly confident that the diagnosis is trichotillomania only. Then I told the patient to go, whatever the issues are, discuss it with their parents. Then after 15-20 minutes, parents and the child, they all were crying. They came back to my chamber, and then they said that, sir, now the girl has told us that she was pulling her ears. She has agreed to everything. And so then I counseled them, you see, this is the biggest win for you. Okay, so in this, getting the patient to agree that she is doing it, this is the biggest win. Now in this, you have to be completely supportive. In my experience, what I have seen is whenever I have sent this patient to psychiatrist or for psychological counseling, this has never worked. This has never worked in such scenarios. I always have felt that I personally have to give time to explain this to the patient and to the relatives. Sometimes it's not possible in a busy OPD. Then I call them again and then explain to them better. But now in this patient, so basically now the patient herself in this, the biggest treatment is the patient's all self-will. So once the patient itself decides that now she has to improve, then only you will see the results in such scenarios. And in this, I unfortunately don't have the follow-up picture. She almost gained all of her hairs back.
Dr. Kavish, would you like to add what antipsychotic medicine you added? Anything special?
Oh, I only gave clonazepam, sir, just to relay the anxiety. I did not give any antipsychotic medicine. I just gave clonazepam, which I routinely use for all my hair transplant patients also, just to allay the anxiety. So just 0.5 milligram clonazepam, that's it. I gave the usual minoxidil and other whatever stuff, the general medical treatment. From the psychiatry point of view, only clonazepam, that too for the first month. And then after that, patient did not require that. But yes, so every time she comes up,
she consumes 10-15 minutes extra. I had to spend on counseling her.
Yeah,
Manoj?
just to add that we have to explain the trichotillomania, like the asking is to when the patient becomes furious. We can show, usually we show the pictures of trichotillomania of other patients to the computer system. So they get the notion that why the doctor is asking these patients, or why the doctor is asking the trichotillomania history. So they get that point by showing the patients of other trichotillomania patients.
Yeah, I agree. What my point is, in general, what I have felt is, see, confronting them or telling them that you are wrong and I am right, this usually never works in this scenario. It only works when the patient also agrees that you are right. So you have to try to bring the patient on the same page. If it's not coming on the same page, it's better to leave it rather to make it even more messy. So it's okay. You can just, but whenever I am suspecting trichotillomania, I always write it as a differential, so that if the patient is going to other dermatologists, they also should be aware that I also thought of it. Okay, I will move on to the next question. Dr. Manoj, sir, this is a typical patient of patterned hair fall of grade 6 baldness, and he has come to you for hair transplant, learning very high about you, and he has have very high expectations from you. How would you proceed in this case? And when you examine, this is his donor area on the parietal side.
I think there's a dermatological problem here. And Rajat, Shashank, Deepak, Kavish, I'll send it right away there and ask them to speak before I do anything.
Yes. Dr. Rajat, would you like to add anything to here?
Sir, can you, Dr. Kavish, can you just repeat what you're saying? I think I missed that.
Yeah, so this was a case of grade 6 alopecia. Came to Dr. Manoj Khanna for getting his hair transplant done. He wanted his full head coverage. And when we were examining the donor area, then this was the finding which was seeing in the donor area. He was having pigmentation and perifollicular scaling in many of the areas.
So I would first take a biopsy in this case.
Yes.
Obviously, and confirm what we are dealing with before proceeding with a transplant.
Yes. So as you rightly mentioned, so we did the biopsy, and this turned out to be a case of lichen planopilaris.
Yeah.
He when we examined, he also had some of the other. He also had mild lichen planus in on the skin already, and he already had mucosal changes also. So in such scenarios, always, as Dr. Manoj also mentioned earlier, so you need to wait for disease stability for at least 1 year before proceeding for hair transplant in such scenarios.
And
Can I ask something here to all the hair transplant specialists?
Yes.
How does so there are, I've seen an increase in the number of patients of frontal fibrosing alopecia over the past few years. How are we all dealing with that, and does transplant do a reasonably good job in such patients?
Yeah, I will give my opinion. See, in fact, there are many hypotheses, or more common theories is also that the frontal fibrosing alopecia is also a variant of lichen planopilaris only. So this is one of the common theories. So we deal it in the same way as lichen planopilaris. So we wait for stability. We wait for clinical stability for 1 year, preferably histological stability too, and then we do a transplant. If I have to break any of these two rules, if I have to do, say, suppose transplant beforehand, then if the patient is insisting, I will always do a test patch first. I would plant 50 or 100 grafts first and see whether it's growing or not, and then I will do. In my experience, I have done a fair bit number of cases of frontal fibrosing alopecia. The graft survival, in my opinion, in this cases is around 60 to 70%. While in comparison in androgenic alopecia, it's beyond 90%. So the graft survival is less. Whatever you do in such scenarios, the graft survival is slightly less. So this has to be explained to the patient that he is likely to require more than one sitting to achieve a decent coverage. But in most of the cases, I have not seen recurrence of frontal fibrosing alopecia. The only issue is the graft survival is slightly less, and you might need to do a repeat transplant to get appropriate density.
Right.
Anyone else would like to add anything to this?
I think the lesser use or no use of adrenaline in the recipient area and keeping the density low in the recipient area like in any other cases of cicatricial alopecia.
Definitely.
These are the key points to do the hair transplant for frontal fibrosing alopecia.
Yeah. In fact, Dr. Rajat, there are now some new researches about the uses of certain sunscreens causing frontal fibrosing alopecia. So that also is one new hot topic of discussion.
Yeah, however, it is still controversial, I believe.
Still controversial, yes.
Yeah, it's not completely said, but yes.
Yes. Dr. Deepak, this is a case who has come to you for management of his hair fall, and this is the scenario. What are your differentials and how will you manage this case?
Okay, so I think for this patient, trichoscopy, biopsy, and proper blood investigations for the thyroid function test and serum ferritin levels, these all should be advised to the patient. The differential diagnosis, which I think in these cases are the diffuse alopecia areata, diffuse unpatterned hair loss, and telogen effluvium.
Okay. Anyone else would like to add anything to this?
So it's more like alopecia areata rather than anything else, and the response will be very poor. Only counseling is going to help.
I think the loss of
more point I would like to add.
a fair debate that it is possibly alopecia areata.
Okay. Yeah. So this yes, I agree to. Now I am seeing just seeing the pictures. We would need to keep alopecia areata as a differential. But yeah, so the history wise, there were some other changes also. He had lots of dentition and other stuff also. So this actually was a case of hypohidrotic ectodermal dysplasia. And yeah, so this, if you see, so this cases with such ectodermal dysplasia, they have typical this kind of presentation. But this also would qualify as a case of diffuse unpatterned alopecia. So because there is significant amount of miniaturization in the donor area. And in such scenarios, because there is not enough donor area, so that's why the hair transplant also is not likely to help much in such scenarios. So we have to use more to hair pieces, and medical treatment also in such scenarios, usually in ectodermal dysplasia, minoxidil and other medical treatments also don't work, though I do give them a trial, but it usually do not work. Okay, Dr. Manoj, sir, what are the most important factors affecting graft survival in your opinion? And what tips you would like to give to young hair transplant surgeons to improve their results?
See, hair transplant is a teamwork. It cannot be done alone.
Yes.
Whether you're doing FUT or doing FUE, whatever you're doing, there are certain steps which the team has to help you, and they must be fine-tuned to what you want and what's important to get a result. Must train your team well and must supervise them well and have a check that they're doing the right things. If you're doing an FUE, of course, minimal out of body time, and B, minimal handling of the graft, because the FUE grafts are much thinner, much liable to be damaged, and the survival becomes better if you transplant them earlier, not have them outside, and minimal handling. Even for a strip technique FUT, proper handling of the strip, cutting of the grafts, handling of the grafts, and the earlier you put them back, the better. I think the biggest tip, you might be a great surgeon, great hair transplant surgeon, but you need to have a good team to be a good, successful hair transplant surgeon. And I had a slide earlier that who will be a better surgeon, hair transplant surgeon, Saurav Ganguly or Tendulkar, and hands down to Saurav Ganguly, because he may not be a better surgeon, but definitely a better organizer. You need to be a very good organizer to be a good hair transplant surgeon.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Deepak, this is a case of this is a female who has come to you. He has already tried 2 years of medical treatment, minoxidil, peptides, everything. And he has come to you for more hairs. How will you manage this case?
For female pattern hair loss and in case of male pattern hair loss too, first of all, I show the grading system for Norwood Hamilton for males and the Ludwig's and Rodney Sinclair in females. So what I make them understand, this is your staging, and like this you will be progressing in the coming days and months and years. So what is the expectation with the treatment? What expectation do you have with the treatment? If you want to stop your loss and have decent improvement, say 10 to 20% of hairs, then you can continue with the medical treatment as you have told, and like other treatments, interventional treatments can be advised. But many times the patients don't get satisfied and they just come that we want a head full of hair. So usually I promise that you won't be getting head full of hair, but hair transplant give you a decent improvement, a good density in the frontal area in all the hair loss area, so that your all alopecia, the scalp skin which is showing, it will be covered and it will be a decent improvement. But
Okay.
I don't promise them moon and stars.
I agree. Dr. Manoj sir, how
Dr.
will you?
Kavish?
Yes.
I am sorry, but I will need to take your leave as discussed.
Yes. Okay. I understand, Dr.
Thank
Rajat.
you to all the panelists and thank you to you. Just have to join another session.
Yes,
So
yes.
thank you. Yeah.
It's
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you, Dr. Rajat, for your time.
Thanks,
Right.
Rajat. Nice seeing you.
Yeah, it was nice having you, sir. Manoj sir, how will you plan hair transplant in this female?
If she has undergone the medical treatment, etc., and there's no result, you have to explain to her it cannot be, as Deepak said, a head full of hair. Be a head with better hair, better looking, but not greatly full of hair. Discuss with her parting zone, the way she wants to comb her hair, the way she wants to keep her hair. Little bit more density in that area. But the frontal zone, I think, is very thin. I can't see the back, although there's thinning as well. So give her the best quality follicles. Females always, remember, the more the number of hair in graft, the better it is, because you want to give more hair. And give good coverage in the front, which should give her a decent result. Again, underplay your ability to what you will deliver. Expectations of female are very high, and being unhappy is quite common with the female if you have not told them earlier.
Yes. What would be the number of grafts would you plan for this female?
I think in this frontal area, probably around 1,000, 1,200 or 1,500 should be good enough. Depending on her donor area, the caliber of the hair, the density of the hair, how many hair has she in every graft, that would be a fair number.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. As I agree. So this is this after picture has been shared to me by the patient, and I have purposely kept this. So from the front view after the hair transplant, the result looks perfectly normal. But I purposely kept the top view. So what everyone needs to understand is, in such scenarios, we primarily have to keep all our focus in the frontal forelock area. And we try to achieve good result in the frontal forelock area. And as you can see in the partitioning area, she's having slightly widened partition in the back area also. But when you're planning hair transplant in female, because we have limited grafts availability, so we can plan in a limited area only. So our main focus is to give a good look from the front. And then in such scenarios, it's better to focus the efforts mainly on the frontal forelock area. Okay, Manoj sir, this is a case of post-acid burn scar. She has lost a lot of scalp hair. She's having depigmentation. She has lost eyebrows also, and is having scarring on the face also. Now she has come to you to get her hairs back. How will you manage this case?
See, a hair transplant in this scenario will be very difficult. You can do a hair transplant to correct the eyebrows, get it back. If she insists that she wants a hair transplant, you can get very limited results. It's going to be difficult. Maybe the older techniques which we had, where you should use a jury flap or something to turn the flap around and bring it in front to get more density, or even do tissue expansion. Expanders on 2 sides, 3 sides, and bring the hairline forward. A wig, if she accepts a wig, is a good idea. The problem with the wig in many people is that the hairline shows. You realize once you see it as a wig. So I've done in a few cases a male, made a good, nice hairline, and then put a wig behind which camouflages. Again, because there's acid burns, there's fibrosis, you cannot have good density even if you do a transplant. So I think the wig is the best option unless she agrees to do tissue expanders, which is going to be a longer process, a little more expensive process, where we can get it corrected. And the donor hair is good. Eyebrow transplant at least will help her eyebrows get corrected.
Yes, Dr. Deepak, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, I would like to add that these patients usually directly come for the hair transplant.
Yes.
And to counsel them that hair transplant won't give you more satisfying results, it is very important. Because counseling is so important, because when you say no to them, usually they tend to go to another doctor to undergo the procedure. This is usually the patient mentality. So proper counseling is must. when you give them adequate time and also explain them why hair transplant will not be a very good option. Okay, it can give average to good results with a reduced density, but it won't be giving very good results because the area is larger and cicatricial alopecia is ensured due to acid burn scar.
Okay.
So counseling will play the major role here.
Yeah. So in this case, fortunately, the patient's donor area were pretty good. So we went ahead and did the transplant, and we did it over 2 settings. So we did the second setting after 9 months, and we improved the eyebrow as well as the hairline in this scenario. So we did the transplant over 2 settings. So you see the first picture. This was after the first setting. So you have to plant hairs at a slightly lower density as compared to others, as we already discussed in cases of scarring alopecia. So you have to plant it at a lower density. And so what I did primarily in this case is, so you try and get good result in the frontal area, because the area in the behind she would be able to cover by the hairs in the back up to an extent. So I tried to focus the efforts more on the front half and to give a better result in that area. And then in second setting, we further increased the density. We did the eyebrow transplant also. And then by proper combing overall, see, if you separate the hairs, the density is not that good in every area. But now with proper combing, she got eyebrow back also, and she was able to do this also. So we did 2 sittings of hair transplant. We also did scalp micropigmentation along with fractional laser resurfacing for the face with PRP. And then this was the final outcome in this particular patient. But this is not going to be possible in every patient. It depends upon the particular factors in those patients. But this particular patient, the graft survival was very high, and she responded very well to transplant. Dr. Shashank, what's the role of PRP therapy or mesotherapy in your practice? How often do you use them?
Though I practice PRP therapy, but not very happy with the results, as other literature and other people tell in the conferences that it's a wonderful technique. I have seen 50% result. Some of the patients respond very beautifully to the treatment, and some people do not respond at all. So I always prefer not to use, but once the patient is saying, and now it's a thing, that is one of the procedure which every patient comes and says, I want PRP therapy. This, not with other procedures. In my clinic, many of the patients have said that I want PRP therapy. So I give them PRP therapy, but on my own patients, those who are on minoxidil, once they have reduced the plateau or the results are not there, only then I add on PRP therapy.
Okay. Yeah. So I would like to differ here. So we already are conducting PRP webinars via IDVLN, and for PRP specifically in patterned hair fall, there are almost more than 50 conducted studies, RCTs or better, who confirms the role of PRP. But what I primarily believe is the PRP does not give you new roots. It's more of a preventive therapy. It helps more as just to it helps to protect the hairs from falling. Has any of the panelists ever used oral minoxidil till now? Any experience in using oral minoxidil?
No.
Yeah, so this is one of the new things which is coming up. It's still not freely available in India, but there are some of the people are using it. But yeah, so I have used it in only few patients who in which nothing else was working. But again, so the current studies show almost 93% chance of hypertrichosis, and then we also run the risk of systemic side effects. So still, this needs to be explored more. We need more evidence for this. Dr. Deepak, so we are just towards the end. This is the last question. Have you tried JAK kinase inhibitors in cases of alopecia areata?
Yeah, personally, I have not used the JAK kinase inhibitors, but with the recent studies, tofacitinib has given very promising results in alopecia areata. But even the promises made in the results are not persistent and permanent. In the alopecia areata, means if we are using a very costlier drug with a significant side effect profile for the results which are not going to be permanent, I am not in favor of a very routine use of or much more use of JAK inhibitors in alopecia areata.
Okay. Anyone else would like to add anything to this? Yeah, so but I would like to differ with Dr. Deepak here. So here, see, the overall the safety profile of JAK kinase inhibitors, in my opinion, is much better than the typical steroid sparing agents we use, methotrexate or cyclosporin. I have used it in almost about 10 to 15 patients of extensive alopecia areata. In India now, oral tofacitinib 5 milligram twice daily is the dosing in which I use. It's very easily available. It's comparatively not that costly, and in coming times, as the company loses its patent, the costing is further likely to go down. The results are exceptionally good in many cases of alopecia areata, but as Dr. Deepak mentioned, the main problem is of recurrence. So once you stop, or even when you taper the dose, the disease tends to recur. So that is one of the biggest challenge. So the results are maintaining only till the time you use it, but that's one of the biggest challenge. So now extrapolating from those, I have also started using oral JAK kinase inhibitors in some cases of extensive vitiligo, and even in cases of active lichen planopilaris. And I am seeing encouraging results with JAK kinase inhibitors, and I feel that more studies needs to be done on this, and it will help further. So I would like to end here.